Hey everybody, it's Jason from the Texas Gun Vault, and once again it's time for the Texas Gun Vault Poll Question of the Week, a weekly vlog that I put out where I ask you, as my viewers and subscribers, about something that deals with guns, gun culture, politics, current events, the news, or something fun like EDC that I want to get your thoughts and opinions on. And this week's question deals with the Supreme Court and what appears to be their inaction to step into cases that obviously are flagrant violations of the Constitution. Even if you read their previous opinions in Heller and Bruin, when it comes to things like the Illinois assault weapon ban and the appeal to them, they go, we're going to wait for the lower courts to do their job. When we all know the lower courts are going to step all over this. They're going to write cleverly worded opinions that, of course, sidestep all of the Supreme Court's rulings. And we're begging the Supreme Court, please do something. As the saying goes, a right delayed is a right denied. And that's what we see in some of these states. We really feel that the injury to the parties, the citizens that are involved in these cases, are great. And if the Supreme Court doesn't step in and just waits for them to get around to it in the normal course of actions, well, it could be too late and the damage be too big. And so I wanted to ask you guys, there always has seemed to be some type of hesitancy in the Supreme Court for them to take up an assault weapons ban case. As I have asked you in previous poll questions of the week, what's the most important issue to you when it comes to our fight for the Second Amendment? The assault weapons bans really always rise to the top because we all have to agree they're probably the most dangerous because they can set precedent where politicians can just ban a gun based off of the looks or the cosmetic features or the actions or just how they feel about them. And that's no way to make good law. And so we look at this as a grave infringement, and we're begging the Supreme Court, even if you rule against us, make up something. Come up, take a case. Tell us where you stand. And they just seem to refuse to do so. And they had the opportunity a couple of weeks ago when it comes to the assault weapons ban case in Illinois. We appealed to them, or the parties involved in this case appealed to them, and they said, nope, we're not going to take it. Now, I understand that some people are going to say that the Supreme Court rarely takes things in before they are done in the lower courts. And granted, all the processes were not done in the lower courts, yes, but you would think that when it comes to the Second Amendment and how they've been treated in the lower and the inferior courts, that the Supreme Court would finally step in and say, we are done with this nonsense. But once again, they chose not to. So I wanted to ask you guys, do you guys ever think the Supreme Court is going to take up a case dealing with assault weapons ban and put this whole issue to rest? I personally don't know myself, but I wanted to see what you guys thought. So with all that said, let's dive right into this week's poll question. This past week, we heard the news that the Supreme Court decided once again to pass up on reviewing an emergency appeal regarding an assault weapon ban case from Illinois. I know I felt let down and frustrated once again as the Supreme Court seems to be taking up other Second Amendment cases relating to very controversial topics. They have agreed to hear cases on concealed carry, bump stocks, and even prohibited persons, but refuse to touch assault weapons bans. I know after polling you, this is the hot button issue most of you would like to finally see resolved. Do you think in the future the Supreme Court will ever take up an assault weapon ban case, and why or why not? For me, as the saying goes, the silence is deafening. There are so many issues that we want resolved. We understand that we have a judicial process and there's things in place for things to run their course. But sometimes when it comes to the infringements of people's rights and the infringements of a lot of people's rights, we hope that these things can get expedited to the highest level. It's imperative that we do this because sometimes the judicial system works too slow. It's not right that issues of grave constitutional matters take years and sometimes even decades to resolve. And of course, we know the time is ticking on some of these justices, especially the ones that are pro-Second Amendment. Let's be honest, the Supreme Court is not getting any younger. And many of the justices that we know are on our side are getting up there in age. And every day that goes by is one less day they can address this issue. And so we plead and we beg with them, please step in. We know what you think. We know what you're going to do. Just expedite this. And they seem to refuse to. But maybe that's a little bit of insight into how they think, and maybe they actually agree with assault weapons bans. I don't know. But let's find out with what you guys said with this week's results. With 137 votes this week, we have yes, they are just waiting for the right case, 36%. Yes, but it will be included in a ruling on another issue, 13%. No, they are weak and just let the inferior courts decide, 23%. No, they think assault weapons bans are okay and agree with the lower courts, 18%. And something else, explain in the comments, 9%. And it definitely does seem like a lot of you guys out there have hope. And I have hope too. I keep hoping that one of these cases, in light of all of their previous decisions, they're finally going to step in and look at these inferior court judges and go, you guys are idiots. We told you how to adjudicate these cases, and now it's time for us to teach you a lesson, to show you what this is supposed to be. Now, in many ways, they've already done that when it came to the Bruin and the Heller decision. They have said that when it comes to banning guns, this is the test. And of course, they always try to come up with clever wordplay to get around those tests. At first, it was dangerous and unusual. And then the lower courts are like, well, they're not unusual, but some of these guns are dangerous, therefore they can be banned. Well, that wasn't the original wording of the opinion. And of course, they let it stand. It doesn't make any sense. We're getting tired of this stuff, just like when it comes to the sensitive places, when it comes to the Bruin decision. Well, what do the lower courts say? Well, you can make anything a sensitive place if the state politicians say it can. That's not what the Supreme Court said. They do this clever wordplay and change the meanings of things. And they step all over what's supposed to be the definitive opinions. And I'm glad to see a lot of you guys have hope. But maybe if you have hope, that clock is running out, as I mentioned, and we really need them to take up something soon. So let's go through each one of these and I'll give you guys my personal thoughts and opinions. And first we have, yes, they are just waiting for the right case. And as I said, I'm glad this won the poll. However, there are too many of these cases. Which one is the right case? You have something that is blatantly unconstitutional happening in Illinois. What originally was supposed to be a piece of insurance legislation within 72 hours gets turned into a gun ban passed in the dark of night. They change the way that the bill is supposed to be read in their legislature, and it's signed by the governor, and nobody has any input. And this is affecting gun stores, gun owners in big ways, huge financial ways, and puts a lot of people at risk of incarceration. If there is ever a better case for them to take up, well, that is the case. But once again, they're silent. And why is that? Why do we wait? The frustration I think a lot of people have right now is that we are so divided in this country, and these things remain unsettled for so long. And all that does is increase the temperature. And if you have a pressure cooker, that pressure is just building up and building up and building up. And it's better to release it early, one way or the other. Don't wait until that pressure cooker is going to blow. And many times the Supreme Court, I think, waits too long on these issues. And I don't understand why. Then we have yes, but it will be included in a ruling on another issue. Now, if I had to vote in this poll, which by the way I never do because I never want to skew the results, however, this is the one I would vote for. I actually think that when it comes down to the bump stock ban case, I kind of feel like they're going to inject language into that ruling, which I think is going to go on our side to extend it to banning guns based off of cosmetic features. That's what I personally believe, and I really feel like that would be the best vehicle. They could essentially kill two birds with one stone. They can stop the executive overreach of many of these agencies, but also stop these gun bans based off of cosmetic means. But maybe that's just me hoping too. Then we have no, they are weak and just let the inferior courts decide, 23%. Now, in general, I really feel like many of the conservative justices probably fall into this category. Just like my complaint with the Republican Party and why I say I am not voting for Republicans anymore. No, I'm not voting for Democrats either, but I don't vote at all because the Democrats, they fight for what they believe in. Republicans say they believe in things, but when they actually have a chance to pass things or rule on things, they don't. For whatever reason, they talk a big game, but they never do. And they're pretty weak. And I think many of these justices, despite what you believe, are actually kind of politicians. You don't get to that level without knowing how the game is played. And I really feel like many of the conservative justices are extremely weak. I really don't have a problem losing. Well, I guess I really do have a problem losing. However, I can take a loss. I can accept it if I feel like the process was just and fair. But at least we had our day in court. But when they never rule on these things, as I said, it just raises the pressure in that pressure cooker. And I know I'm not the only one that feels this. It's a general consensus, not only in the gun community, but in the country as a whole. And I don't think it really bodes well for the future, especially when it comes to the stability of a civilized and civil society. Then we have no, they think assault weapons bans are okay and agree with the lower courts. And I think this might be a possibility. I like to think, based off of their previous opinions and rulings, that this is not the case. However, you do have 3 liberal justices, which we already know how they're going to vote. And then you got John Roberts, and he's always been kind of wishy-washy. I have no idea. And some people are saying Amy Coney Barrett isn't really that much of an ally of the Second Amendment. So I really can't tell you. Maybe there's enough of them to realize we don't have the votes to overturn this, and that's why they don't take it. They're just for assault weapons bans. Then they think that they're okay. In my heart, I don't believe that's the truth, but it could be a possibility. Sometimes it's hard to read the tea leaves in these situations. And then finally, we have something else explained in the comments. And most of the people that I think voted for this talked about how the Supreme Court always waits for these cases to play out completely in the lower courts. And I respect that. However, sometimes I really do think there is a time for an emergency hearing on these things when it is a gross constitutional overreach. So that's what I think about all these, but let's see what you guys had to say with the top-rated comments of the week. And the top-rated comment of the week comes from Stickfighter 1038, who says, I think that the Supreme Court will eventually be forced to take up the issue even if certain justices do not want to. The assault weapons ban now are starting to include all semi-autos and a majority of firearms. Also, the circuits will eventually contradict themselves. And that's kind of why I hope that we have a ruling in the Fifth Circuit. However, in order for that to happen, you have to have a state in the Fifth Circuit have an assault weapons ban. But the Fifth Circuit, which generally is pro-Second Amendment, covers states that are very pro-Second Amendment. So the odds of that happening and having a circuit split are kind of few and far between, in my opinion. But that would definitely elevate it to the court faster if we did have a split among the circuits. Then we have Mark U.S. Hornsby 9846, who says, I think they will take up an assault weapons ban case, but I don't think it will be one that will cause a lot of controversy, which I don't know of any assault weapons ban case that won't cause controversy, but who knows? There are some that are not as bad as others. I want to say the Maryland assault weapons ban actually has quite a few exemptions, but you have other states like Illinois and California that pretty much ban everything under the sun. So I guess that is a possibility. Then we have Car Guy 3028, who says, they are waiting for a final resolution to a case. All these cases are still going through the process. The Supreme Court typically doesn't intervene until the lower courts issue a final ruling. And yes, I completely understand that, but that's also why these lower courts are slow walking this. In some cases that deal with the Second Amendment, we're still waiting 2 or 3 years on some of these rulings. It's almost like they're never going to rule on them because they know it would go to the Supreme Court eventually, and they're just biding their time. They're under no time restraint. If it takes them 4 decades to issue a ruling, well, it will take them 4 decades to issue that ruling. our court systems go too slow. In my personal opinion, I kind of believe we need to amend the Constitution and say, once a case is heard, you have 1 calendar year to write your opinion. If not, you have to be held accountable for this, or maybe you have to go up for review, or you could lose your seat. I think a year is a reasonable amount of time. It's too long in my opinion, but I understand that it takes time for them to do their research, but a year is plenty of time. Then we have Deadly TA, who says, honestly, I think if they were going to take a case, they would have taken Illinois. The case was tailor-made for a constitutional Supreme Court. I can't figure out why they didn't. Well, the only issue that they might have had is, as the last commenter said, they were just waiting for the lower court to finish their case. But really, as I said, this is a gross overreach. We just want them to take the case. Even if you rule against us, at least we feel like you heard our voice and we had a chance to argue this. But not doing anything at all is a right delayed, and a right delayed is a right denied. And then finally, we have R.P. Morris Jr., who says, this court will 100% permit the assault weapons ban. Roberts' concern is to not be viewed as right-wing, and Kavanaugh's concern is to agree with Roberts everywhere he can. So there goes the majority. Assault weapons ban is not going to be overruled by this court. And that's a really interesting opinion. It could happen, and I do agree. Roberts does not want to be a politician, or he claims he doesn't. I mean, look at some of his rulings when he first got on the bench. They were not very pro-Second Amendment. They were not very pro-America or pro-conservative. He seems to try to walk the line and make everybody happy, but you guys know you can't make everybody happy. He wants the court to be above politics. Now, I can respect that. However, the way the court is treated in the world of politics, you would think that eventually he would go, okay, I've tried to do this in a civil way. It's time for us to take these cases up that we said we wouldn't take, or have kind of walked around, and now we're actually going to make decisions on them because you degrade the integrity of the Supreme Court. But who knows? Maybe one day he will. But that's what you guys said and what I think. And we don't have any answers on this one, but hopefully sometime soon, in the next year, 2 years, 5 years, or a decade, we will finally get the Supreme Court to settle this decision once and for all. And that will be a great day, hopefully, for gun owners across America. Because as the Supreme Court sits right now, I want to say they would rule against them. But the time is ticking. If we don't get a conservative Republican in the next election, well, as these justices retire or leave the court, they might not be replaced by people that are on our side. And that's important too. The clock is ticking. And that pressure cooker is building up pressure. It's not a good recipe. We need something resolved soon. So that is the Texas Gun Vault poll question of the week. And if you guys want to participate in next week's poll, please go to the community tab of my YouTube channel. I will also post a link in the comment and the description below. Please go over there, see what next week's poll is about. Make sure that you vote, comment, and like other people's comments so we can get the top rated comments of the week. So let me know in the comment section of this video if I got any of this wrong, and if you have any insights into what you really think is going to happen. I know you hope they're going to take up the case, but in your heart, ask yourself, will they really? We don't know. So, as always, thanks for watching.